The most powerful institutions in the world do not announce their decisions. They do not hold press conferences. They do not send out statements crafted for maximum media impact. They simply act. Quietly. Precisely. With the absolute confidence of something that has been operating for 1,000 years and fully intends to operate for 1,000 more. Buckingham Palace just acted. And what has been set in motion behind those walls will echo through royal history in a way that no interview, no documentary, no memoir ever could. Because what the Crown just did not target Harry. It did not target Meghan. It targeted something far more permanent than either of them. It targeted the future. Welcome to Royal Report Daily. Today we are telling the complete story of how the oldest institution in the world quietly and permanently removed 2 children from the royal record. Why it happened, how it happened, what it means, and why. When you understand the full picture, the palace's move looks less like punishment and more like the cold, mechanical execution of rules that were never going to bend for anyone. Let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is not 2019. It is not even close. The year was 1917. The world was at war. Empires that had stood for centuries were collapsing under the weight of revolution, conflict, and political chaos. The Russian royal family had just been swept from power. Monarchies across Europe were falling one after another. And inside Buckingham Palace, King George V understood something with urgent clarity. Tradition alone was not enough to protect the crown. Sentiment alone was not enough. Popularity alone was not enough. What was needed was law. So he did something no British monarch had done quite so precisely before. He sat down with his legal advisors and wrote the rules. Not as custom, not as expectation, as binding, enforceable, permanent legal language. The document was called the Letters Patent of 1917. And it became the foundation of royal identity for every generation that followed. Inside it were 3 requirements. 3 boxes that every royal child must check without exception. First, legitimate royal bloodline, officially recognized by the crown. Second, official birth registration with the royal household. Not a press release, not a family announcement. The crown itself had to document and claim the birth. Third, baptism into the Church of England. Registered, witnessed, officially recorded, not as tradition, but as legal requirement. These rules were designed with one purpose: to protect the crown from confusion, from manipulation, from the kind of ambiguity that had destroyed other royal families across Europe. For over 100 years, they worked. Every royal birth, without exception, followed them. No shortcuts, no workarounds, no special cases, until Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor arrived in 2019. And the first crack appeared. On the surface, Archie's birth looked exactly as it should. Proud parents, global media attention, a new royal baby welcomed into the world with smiles and carefully managed photographs. But inside the paperwork, inside the document specifically designed to establish and protect a child's identity permanently, something happened that set off quiet alarm bells inside palace walls. Archie's birth certificate was initially completed with his mother's full legal name. Rachel Meghan Markle. Standard. Correct. Unremarkable. Then the document was changed. Her full legal name was removed and replaced with a title. Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Birth certificates are not social media profiles. They are not branding documents. They are permanent legal records. They do not get changed casually. They do not get updated like websites or press releases. When a royal birth certificate is altered, it attracts serious attention from the people inside the institution whose job it is to care about exactly these things. Meghan said publicly that the palace had forced the change against her wishes. Palace staff said Meghan had requested it herself. Neither side produced documentation that definitively settled the dispute. Both maintained their position. And in that back and forth, something happened that mattered far more than who was right. Doubt entered a royal legal record. In the world of the crown, doubt in official documentation is not an inconvenience. It is not something to be managed with a press statement or explained away in an interview. A royal birth record with question marks attached to it is a foundational problem. It is a crack. And cracks, as anyone who understands how institutions work, do not stay small on their own. The palace noted it, filed it, and waited. By the time Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor arrived in June 2021, the palace had already developed its response to the Sussex situation. And that response was silence. The world expected the familiar picture. royal physicians involved in the birth, an official announcement released under the palace seal, the crown formally claiming its newest member and writing that claim into the official record. None of it came. Instead, Lilibet's birth was announced through a warm and carefully worded press release issued by Harry and Meghan's personal office. From California, thousands of miles from any palace wall, any royal registrar, any official crown involvement of any kind. No palace seal, no royal household confirmation, no official record, no crown documentation of any kind beyond the bare minimum acknowledgement that the birth had occurred. To people reading the announcement on their phones that morning, it seemed like a lifestyle difference. One baby born in Britain, one baby born in America. Simple enough. To those who understand what the 1917 letters patent actually requires, it was something else entirely. Lilibet became the first Windsor relative in modern history to be introduced to the world without any crown involvement in the documentation of her arrival. The palace had not claimed her. The royal household had not recorded her in the way the letters patent requires. And in the eyes of the institution, that absence was not neutral. It was significant. It was the first time in over a century that a child born into the Windsor family had entered the world entirely outside the official royal record-keeping process. The palace said nothing publicly, because palace silence, as this story demonstrates repeatedly, is not emptiness. It is strategy. The crown was not ignoring the situation. It was documenting it, building the case, quietly and methodically, that the Sussex children existed outside the formal boundaries of the royal system. Then came the baptism. And this is where documentation problems became genuine legal consequence under the terms the 1917 letters patent established. Months after Lilibet's birth, Meghan spoke publicly about a baptism that had taken place in California. She described it with warmth and evident meaning. The family gathered. The ceremony was beautiful, a moment of genuine spiritual celebration. For most families, that is exactly what a baptism is. A personal, spiritual, deeply meaningful event between a family and their faith. For a royal child, it is also a legal requirement. The third pillar of the 1917 letters patent is not a suggestion. It is the formal moment a child is officially connected to the Church of England, which has been constitutionally bound to the British Crown since the 16th century. A royal baptism must be registered with the Church of England, not as tradition, as legal documentation. According to sources familiar with church records, Lilibet's California baptism was never registered with the Church of England. The ceremony happened. The family was present. The moment was real and meaningful to the people in that room. But in the official record, the record the letters patent requires, it did not exist. This was not, in the palace's view, a cultural misunderstanding or an honest mistake. It was a failure to meet one of the three foundational requirements established by law over a century ago. And rather than strengthening Lilibet's connection to the royal institution, the unregistered ceremony did the opposite. It confirmed the gap. It left her formally unconnected to the church that the crown is constitutionally built upon. Two cracks now existed. One in Archie's birth documentation, one in Lilibet's baptism record. And the institution that runs on documentation, precision, and rules older than most countries had everything it needed to act. While all of this was developing in the paperwork, something more personal was happening privately. Harry understood, on some level, what was coming. And according to people familiar with the conversations that were taking place during this period, he reached back toward the institution he had walked away from with a desperation that speaks to how real the stakes felt to him. He made phone calls, late at night, not polished or strategic, raw and emotional. He asked the palace to reconsider. He pushed for Archie and Lilibet to be formally recognized in the royal record. He argued that whatever had happened between him and the family, whatever wounds had been opened by years of public confrontation, his children should not be the ones who paid the price. His argument was rooted in blood. They were grandchildren of the king. They carried Windsor lineage. Blood should count for something. And according to accounts of these conversations, the palace's response was consistent, measured, and completely unmoved. One official reportedly told him something that sources say stayed with him for a long time afterward. The words were simple and direct. This is not about emotion. This is about order, lineage, and the future of the crown. That sentence reportedly changed something in Harry's understanding of the situation. Because it was not a threat. It was not an argument designed to be countered. It was a statement of institutional fact. The crown was not going to be moved by personal appeals. It was not going to make an exception for sentiment. It was going to apply the rules. The same rules it had applied consistently for over 100 years. Without exception, without apology, to everyone, regardless of who they were or how famous they had become. Harry realized, perhaps for the first time in a truly visceral way, what stepping back had actually meant. He had not simply walked away from royal duties. He had walked his children to the edge of the royal record, and the palace was completing the process of stepping them off it entirely. When the crown's final decisions were formally processed and documented, they came with the quiet efficiency the institution is known for. No cameras, no press conference, no opportunity for appeal. The consequences for Archie and Lilibet were comprehensive and permanent. No royal titles. Archie would not be Prince Archie. Lilibet would not be Princess Lilibet. No ceremonial roles. No official duties. No position in the line of succession. No place in the permanent royal archives. The books that record the Windsor story across centuries, that historians and constitutional scholars and future generations will turn to when they want to understand who the British royal family was and is. Those books will not carry the names of Harry's children as royal members. Crown-funded security withdrawn. Their protection a private matter entirely. In the royal world, a title is not decoration. It is a key. It opens doors that cannot be opened any other way. It writes a child into a story that is larger than any individual lifetime. Without that key, the connection to the Windsor legacy is severed. Not as punishment, not as revenge, as the clean and mechanical execution of rules that predate everyone involved. One of the things that gets consistently underestimated when watching this story from the outside is how thoroughly the palace understood what it was doing throughout this entire period, and how deliberately it chose to do it in silence rather than noise. While Harry and Meghan built their public narrative across interviews and documentaries and memoirs and podcast appearances, the palace did something that looked, from the outside, like weakness. It said almost nothing. It did not respond in detail. It did not attempt to match the Sussex media operation with one of its own. What it was actually doing was waiting. Patient, deliberate, strategic waiting. The Crown has been managing these situations for centuries. It knows that the public narrative fades. The headlines move on. The documentary gets replaced by the next documentary. The memoir gets replaced by the next book. But the paperwork stays. The legal records stay. The institutional processes stay. And the Crown had been quietly, methodically building those records while the media world was focused on the public drama. The silence was not emptiness. It was the sound of an institution doing what it does, building the case, documenting the gaps, waiting for the right moment to apply rules that had been in place since 1917. And when the moment came, it applied them. Archie and Lilibet will grow up loved. They will grow up in California with parents who clearly and genuinely adore them. They will grow up with freedom from the extraordinary weight of royal obligation, freedom from the relentless media pressure that Harry himself described as damaging and that Diana paid everything to try to escape. That freedom has real value. Whatever else is true about the decisions Harry and Meghan made, the life they have built for their children in Montecito is a life free from the specific and documented costs of growing up inside the royal institution. But the pages of royal history, the pages that survive everything, that outlast interviews and documentaries and media cycles and the entire span of any individual human life. Those pages will not carry Archie and Lilibet's names as royal children of the House of Windsor. Not as punishment, not as revenge. As the result of requirements established in 1917 being applied in 2024 the same way they have been applied to every royal family for over 100 years. The absence is the statement. The silence is the verdict. The paperwork is the sentence. And in the world of the Crown, once the paperwork is done, the decision is forever. That is all for today here at Royal Report Daily. If you want to stay ahead of every development in this story and every move the royal family makes, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on your notifications. We cover everything the mainstream coverage misses. The royal world never stops moving, and we will be here every single time it does.